to the yard sign. It's been a minute. Hope you all had a great summer. I'm also rediscovering summer now with a 7-year-old. Got to keep them occupied, and so decided to take a little bit of time off to spend time with the family and make the most of the summer. But of course, there's never a shortage of news. So as we get back into the swing of doing the show, we are just going to pick right up more or less where we left off. As of course, not a lot has changed, fortunately. A lot of shenanigans continue in the world of politics, as they always do. But we certainly have plenty to talk about, as always, as well. Excited as we got two familiar faces on the show today. And so let's go ahead and do a rundown of the topics before we jump right into it. Tonight, we're going to talk about Biden's laptop crisis continued, as now the charges are starting to come out. Major development there in regards to what Hunter Biden is and is not going to be charged with, and kind of how all that continues to develop. We'll talk presidential primaries, especially given that, again, here in Florida, we've got two of the contenders currently at the top, gunning it out for the Republican nomination. And Tampa raising taxes. I'm sure it's a familiar story wherever you may be listening or watching this podcast, but they're planning to do it. They're wanting to do it right here in Tampa. And so we'll pick it apart. And again, just a broader example of Democrats never knowing how to resolve budgetary issues other than to raise taxes on people, especially in the midst of a terrible economy and record inflation. And so, as you can see there, our guests today, Nate Ginter, Joe Wicker, two friends of the show. Happy to have them back on.
Where do I look?
Aniebal's out on medical leave.
There it is.
What's up, guys?
Well, great to be back, Johnny. And I was worried you've been struck down with the COVID bug there.
It's crazy. Yeah. Like when I first heard that it was coming around again, I was like, how in the world are people catching this? And then all of a sudden, it's like a friend of mine, mutual friend of mine, Joe and I's, caught it. And then my grandmother and my aunt down in South Florida caught it. Now, my grandmother gave it to my aunt. How my grandmother got it, I have no idea.
Probably out dancing.
Yeah. I mean, no, look, that's no joke. Like, she parties harder than I do, man. She's probably been in retirement for a good 20 years and enjoys every minute of it. Her passport is well taken care of. Let's just say that. It's got plenty of stamps on that one. So she deserves it. She earned it. But yeah, it's kind of crazy, especially. They were saying, early on that this was going to be kind of like a flu thing where it's going to come around, maybe like a seasonal thing.
Just 14 more days, man. 14,
that's right.
14,
2 weeks.
14,000 more days to stop
Oh my gosh.
Flatten the curve.
It's crazy because when going through COVID here in Florida, and you watch some of these news recaps, some of these documentaries, and you find that people say, well, 2 years into the lockdown. I'm like, 2 years into the lockdown? I'm like, like some people, like, I don't know how they made it through, again, this kind of...
Well, the way people will still argue it, like the data's not in, no.
Right.
It doesn't help. So... and because that was the only card that half of the country was trying to play, they don't really want to talk about it anymore. But the reality is, no, we got the data, we followed the science, and it was the exact wrong advice.
Yeah, the biggest idea was that locking down saved lives, right? Stay home saved lives.
Right.
It was on your Facebook. They had the Facebook things that, what is it called when you put it over your picture or whatever, like the
profile,
you put it on your Facebook,
like a little flag or like a little ribbon or something like that,
or something.
And so it would be it was like a circular thing around your picture, like stay home, save lives, and that was like basically the biggest thing that everybody not agreed on, but it was kind of like the only thing you could really do prior to the vaccine. Stay home, save lives. That's what it was.
Like the Ukraine flag. Can't fight in the war, so I'm going to put a little ribbon on my picture.
Put a little something on my Facebook, show that I'm down for the cause. I'm doing my part.
That's right.
I'm doing my part. I played video games all day today. Like in my house.
Hey, our taxes are doing their part.
Yeah, exactly. But then John Hopkins basically came out with a study that debunked it and said lockdowns did not have the effect that they were supposed to, and in fact contributed to all sorts of pathological issues
Yeah.
like suicide, drug overdoses, child abuse. All these things, increased and spiked, and I think the mental health problems have continued.
Well, and what's crazy is obviously how it did change, our world, and how, now it's almost like you can't tell employees to go back to the office, right? We're seeing a lot of businesses that can't tell, but it's great for small businesses, right? Where now you don't have to get larger office space because you can tell some of your employees to stay home.
But the big businesses are struggling with that because they can't control their people anymore, and it's like the cat's out of the bag. Like you can't tell somebody who's literally on their laptop in Aruba to come back to the office. They're like, no.
Right.
No, I'm having a great time. And then like even more importantly, like think of all the moms who were balancing previously before, right? Getting the kids up at 6. The kids are up at 6 a.m. It's like the military. Like they're up at 5, 5:30, 6, and then they're dropped off here at 7, and mom's at work by 8, and all this, and daycares, and the kids are staying late, and then after school programs, then they're home at 7, 8 p.m. and exhausted, and then moms were able to reconfigure their life, and they're spending more time with their kids. They don't have the mom guilt.
So I live in a cul-de-sac and kind of roughly polled because I just moved in there. And so, as you're talking to neighbors, I would say half, if not maybe even a little more than half of my neighbors work from home.
Yeah.
Well, which is so weird.
Which is weird. For half of a community or even a small little area, for half people to work from home is a lot.
Well, one of the other things that's been an interesting factor in all of this is, I don't know if you guys have followed any of the basically the office rental industry is in a severe crisis right now. Because everybody was refinancing based on the, building these things based on the idea, well, I'll be able to refinance at a lower rate.
And the WeWork thing and all that.
Yeah. Well, the reality is the rates are now sometimes double or triple what they were leasing space for. Yeah. So they have lower occupancy at the same time as a lot of places that were in that industry have literally gone bankrupt because they couldn't afford the balloon payments that were coming and they couldn't refinance their way out of the problem again. I don't believe we're ever going to get to a point where nobody goes to work, but or nobody goes in. There's always going to be those things that need that in-person presence. But the reality is, it's going to be a trend that I will say, overall, you're going to have these. Over the windows where the specific things.
Well, you mentioned WeWork, and before we jump into the topic, but you mentioned WeWork, and I do wonder what effect it has had on the co-working space, right? Because they seem to be doing okay, and again, not all. Some jobs are going to require you that for a client meeting that you have a legitimate office to go to, and
every co-working space.
You're not going to invite people to your dining room table.
Yeah, we do a lot of in-person meetings, and I can tell you every co-working space I've been into through and during the pandemic, and now after, is booming.
Yeah. But I always, and maybe I could be completely wrong on this, but I always thought the co-working space model was geared towards the entrepreneur who was looking to have an office, but you can't go out and spend the money for this massive office, right?
It's that too.
Yeah. So it's we're going to give you Wi-Fi, we're going to give you a receptionist. You will only actually lease or own, you won't own, but you'll only actually have this little office, tiny little thing. But you have all this other meeting space where you can. It basically allowed entrepreneurs and small businesses to look and feel like big businesses. Yeah,
but again, there's degrees to that, because you can have office space within a co-working space, right? And then take advantage of their kind of really upscale, because most of them are really nice, conference rooms. And
I just thought of something. I just had an epiphany.
Business idea?
Not a business idea. It's a terrible idea. I just had an idea. I had an idea. It's a terrible idea. So I'm in healthcare. And I'm required to have a commercial office space.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. I'm required by regulation to have a commercial office space. I cannot work from home even if I wanted to. Okay? What if industries, these big shot companies, right? What if they start lobbying because they love regulation.
Sure.
Big businesses love regulation.
Of course.
Right?
Easy way to take down your competition.
Keeps the little guy down. What if they ask for a regulation? They'll say, oh, this is a IT security thing. We need people here in our servers and blah, blah. They can convince the politicians to literally regulate mandatory commercial space.
Well, the ironic one.
What if they were able to do something like that, like they do for like some healthcare and other types of industries?
It's the same thing as like having a law that says that you can't pump your own gas.
Yeah. Oh, right.
You know what I mean? It's the same.
Which I think New Jersey still has it.
They just. I read that the last state. I think it was Portland. It's in Portland somewhere, but the last state just got rid of it.
Wow.
Like literally this month, it was illegal to pump your own gas.
Dude,
the jobs lost were in the hundreds.
Yeah, I mean, dude, meth heads everywhere cried.
by mistake, I'm a Southerner, right, and proud of it. But by mistake, when I was traveling for corporate world, I was in New Jersey quite a decent amount.
Yeah.
And I pulled the rental car up to a gas station, and I was like on my way to the airport, and I think I was even catching a red eye. I mean, it was late, and I get out to pump my gas, and they're like giving me a hard time and like whatever, and I'm like, and the dude's like, no, I'll get it. And I'm like, no, and I'm thinking he's being polite, and I'm like, bro, no one's ever offered to pump my gas. I'm like, no, I'm good, I got it. And he's like, no, you can't pump your gas. I'm like, I can't pump my gas. Like, no, I can pump, bro. Trust me, I can pump my gas. Like, do I look like a kid? Like, back then I might have still looked kind of young. I'm like, but like I can pump my own gas. I had no clue,
right?
That I in New Jersey that it was like law. And then the guy was like, no, my job is to pump gas. And so then I'm like, your job is to pump gas? Like, and then I realized I was kind of being offensive. I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, it blew my mind. And finally, the guy, I promise you, it was innocent. I wasn't trying to be, difficult. I truly did not understand why in the world I was being like told I couldn't pump my gas. And I'm like, I'm just trying to get to the airport. I'm going to pump this gas. I'm good, bro. Appreciate it. Like, I thought like maybe he's working for tips or something. Like, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And then finally he just gave up. He was just like, I can't explain it to this kid. Like, he's from out of town.
Kind of like the first time you stay at a nice hotel and there's a bellhop who insists on taking your bags. And
and you're like, no, I got,
But I was just saying my stuff, weirdo.
But I found out later but I didn't know until later that he was in a union. His job was that, and that the law was that he had to pump it. And I was like,
yeah. So again, ironically, out of all of this, the ones that made big noise, I think about 2 weeks ago, was Zoom. And Zoom now demanding that all of their employees return back to the office.
Are you kidding me? Wow. How do they do that? How do they do that?
Over a Zoom call, I would imagine.
Here's the problem. If you've ever worked in a traditional corporate office environment, what you know is that corporation, this could just be the ones that I worked at, but by all accounts, probably half the employees there were entirely unnecessary if everybody just worked hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things where, like, and I try to explain this to people when it comes to dealing, like, why I believe some things are a good idea. I just don't want the government doing them. There's no profit factor ultimately guiding the ship. So they're never going to get found out for being ineffective.
Sure.
Because there's no actual objective.
Yeah. No, you're right. No, you're right.
And there is no mission statement. There is no objective. There is no team cohesion because all of the things that guide a business are looked down upon by people in politics.
I saw where the CEO of Delta Airlines, they were some major conference or whatever, they were talking about this dilemma, and the CEO of Delta Airlines came out and was like, yeah, I can tell you why your employees don't want to come home because they're all on my airplanes. But keeping it real, like what he was saying was, they have data, they can track all this, like they know who's doing what. He was saying, oh yeah, these people are traveling to vacation destinations that previously, before work from home, they could have never lived like that.
Right.
They could have never enjoyed that type of life.
Yeah.
And he said, so people are flying to places.
Even schedule-wise.
Yes. Yeah. People are picking up and just flying somewhere for the weekend, and because of Wi-Fi, they're working.
Right.
And he's like, your employees are on my airplanes.
Yeah.
They don't want to
Or
come
you
back.
take a Thursday night flight, you work a little bit on Friday, maybe a meeting or two and this
Big
and that,
deal. Yeah.
and by 3 o'clock you're done, and you're you're enjoying the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico or something.
Or maybe you do a little something on the weekend while you're in the Dominican Republic, and your employer's like, man, they're such a dedicated employee, like working hard, burning the midnight oil. It's like, well, I'm in the DR, like I'm having a great time,
There's a
Schedule
mouse
emails.
jiggler like out by. It's just a scenic shot of like an ocean shack, and there's a mouse jiggler inside.
Well, no, I mean, again, the other great advancement has got to be the virtual backgrounds, right? Because now nobody knows where you are.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Speaking of things that don't make sense anymore, let's get into our first topic, which is Hunter Biden and his laptop. Of course, actually, the last time you were on the show, Nate, we talked about this. Hunter Biden continuing to make news and really kind of pull back the curtain on our judicial system and the unfairness of it. And we're not only seeing that in terms of...
Can we also start with the idea that I often find glossed over, which is this is not a mystery. Everything is factually there. That has been reported on.
Right.
It has been 100% verified. It's not 99% true. It's 100%.
Everything that was purported.
Yes.
You know that.
Can you imagine if that laptop belonged to Donald Trump?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, forget it.
It would be 24/7 news. And actually, since there's evidence of like multiple felonies, video and picture photographic evidence of felonies occurring, can you imagine?
So watching these late game developments with some of the stuff that they tried to pull in those plea agreements, like getting immunity for any future crimes committed. What? That's a wild one.
Right. Well,
Good
actually,
on the judge though to recognize that like this thing seems whack.
Yeah.
Like they tried to slip that in there to make this whole thing just go away. Like we're going to prosecute him. He's going to plead to something, and then we're all going to move on and stop talking about the laptop, right? Mm-hmm. And then that judge was like, this doesn't look right.
Yeah. So one of the things, and Lindsay's going to pull it up here in a second. Oh, I revealed her. I revealed the producer's name. Oh man. Oh, I'm in so much trouble. But our producer is going to pull up the article that I just found out where he has been they dropped all of the tax evasion charges.
Yes.
Really?
As of,
because those were the serious ones.
As of Friday.
And which, by the way,
why
he has admitted to.
But it shows you how when the media wants a story to go silent and go quiet. Well, what do? You drop it. You drop the bomb on a Friday at 5 o'clock. Yeah. This article came out Friday morning. But again, it's a Friday. Yeah. And then they had the Maui, the story which they were all obsessed with. And so Hunter Biden, misdemeanor tax charges, misdemeanor by the way, for millions and millions of dollars, misdemeanor. Tax charges are dismissed for now.
But, by the way, shouldn't be dismissed because he has allocated to them already.
Right.
This is not something that they were worried about having trouble proving or it being expensive.
Right.
This is stuff that they already have the proof
But
for.
here's the thing. But here's the thing, though. Like, it's only. Now, I'm not an attorney or a tax attorney, but I think I'm right in saying it's only illegal to not file your taxes if you owe money.
Correct.
If the government owes you money, you don't have to file.
Correct.
If they owe you a return,
actually,
they will not come tracking you down. Hey, we're pretty sure we owe you some money because they know how much money they owe, right? So anyway,
we heard you've been evading taxes.
Yeah.
Here's a check.
They'll tell you that they don't know what you owe, but in reality, if they owe you money, they won't chase you down. But if
they
you
know exactly what you owe.
But here's where I'm
unless you're getting paid under the table, which is why they want to go after all these mobile apps.
Here's kind of where I'm at.
That's why I sell Beanie
with Hunter
Babies out
Biden.
of my trunk.
Exactly. You're probably making bank.
Cash only.
Shadow government. Dude.
That's right.
That's right. Shadow market.
Do you sell them in Bitcoin?
It's a Doge.
Doge. The thing about Hunter Biden, I'm not torn on it. This is kind of my overall view. Rich people and powerful people, they have these kids. They don't like force their kids to work and earn and you know get by like a normal life, you know,
Right.
and they grow up in privilege, and then some, not all, right, because it you know, some people can be really good parents about it, but some people just don't do a good job, and everything isn't on the parent, right? You can do well and it not work out still. Kids going to make their own choices, but a lot of times these kids, they grow up, you know, with that trust fund life, and so they end up getting onto drugs or alcohol, and that hooks into you,
Yeah.
you know, no matter who you are. And Hunter, obviously, okay, he got hooked, and it took over his life, and that is what it is. Okay, now I'm not beating up Joe Biden because of the fact that he has a son with a drug problem. My issue is this.
He was in on it.
Is that you can't then continue, you can't use your
Right.
son to do side deals with Ukraine,
Right.
Yeah.
to do deals with China.
Yep.
You're a vice president, or he was a senator, and then a vice president, and now president. You're now a security risk to the country. If you want, if you have a drug addicted son who's got money problems and a laptop that's got, you know, prostitutes on it, like, okay, but you can't then act as if it's not an issue and that it's not a big deal, because everybody knows that if that was one of Trump's 5 children or any of us,
Yeah.
we'd be under the jail.
Yeah.
We'd be under the jail.
Immediately.
Gun charges,
Yeah.
drug charges, smoking crack on video,
Right.
prostitution,
The
potentially
gun charge
underage.
alone.
We don't even
the
know
gun
about
charge alone.
Yeah,
Well,
we don't even know about the
well-
age of these women,
Well, the other
the
thing,
taxes, the cocaine.
Right.
I mean, it's just
So
like,
this
dude.
is the problem with Trump derangement syndrome, is that you can really shortcut a lot of conversations with a lot of the very left leaning Democrats by going, I am sure that you feel genuinely scared of another Donald Trump presidency, and most of them will tell you absolutely.
Right.
And then when you say, so you would be willing to accept pretty much any behavior from somebody as long as they are the person who is opposing Donald Trump, because in your mind he's the worst thing possible.
Right.
So everything up to the worst thing is on the table for you.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that that's what the media has displayed over the last couple of years. That's the way people, I mean, I know personally people that are, you know, at least honest about their TDS and will tell you, yeah.
it might make it into the DSM-5.
It's
TDS, yeah,
you know,
Trump
I
mentions
want
it. It might make
that
it
to
into
be a
the
thing.
books.
Like,
But imagine the audacity
yeah.
that his lawyers had to basically try to negotiate a plea deal.
Immunity.
Yeah, to be
We'll agree to
basically
this,
not
and
only
you
not only for
never-
what he'd
yeah.
already done,
But for the future.
for
All
anything
future
going
crimes,
forward.
yeah.
Now, what I'm thinking is, why not just let the whole thing play out and then have Daddy, have Daddy give you a pardon? You know what I mean?
Because
And-
if the
Yeah,
second,
that's a good point.
Because they have to allocute to a bunch of crimes then. And the issue is, if he allocutes to a bunch of crimes, they get to ask questions about that.
The discovery
and
process,
in
yeah.
the discovery process, he doesn't just go, yeah, I did all the stuff.
And then, yeah.
No, they can ask
they
questions.
still have to
and-
reveal everything.
Right. And hey,
Can you
listen,
pardon somebody for anything?
Yes.
Like, but can he give a blanket pardon, like he's not guilty of anything?
No, he
ever
has
in the
to-
future?
he has
to be
to-
charged with something, right?
So yes, he has to be
need
adjudicated.
they need him to basically be charged and
He has to be.
yeah.
He has to be convicted.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah,
they're
yeah.
basically with the charges being dismissed, they're saying it was a venue issue, which I don't quite understand all
Okay,
of that.
so
but
that means it could come right back
so
up.
yeah,
right
they're
back up
saying
somewhere.
that if they change the venue, then they're probably likely going to bring the charges back. And I
Oh
guess
yeah, I'm sure it's going to happen. So,
yeah, and so it's not it's not a matter of case of if, but
Yeah.
when. But still, the fact that he was this close
Oh, yeah.
to getting away with all of it.
Well,
Yeah, it was, yeah.
I look at it.
Yeah.
This thing has been the tail that wags the dog since the very beginning. Johnny, you and I have talked about this in the past, but I say all I needed to know about how deep this goes was how it was handled in the very beginning, which is to say 50 of supposedly the top intelligence experts in the country
Yeah.
said that it had all the signs of Russian collusion.
yeah.
Now, here's the problem
Yeah,
with that.
yeah.
Not only did it not have all of them, it
Right,
had none of the
it,
signs
right,
of Russian
Yeah.
collusion.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And it was actually the negative was proved, and one of the things that is triple disturbing. There's so many layers to this that really gets into where we're at now. So we also know that the government was at the same time paying Twitter to suppress posts and stories that were in opposition.
But it shows you the level of infection and corruption that is currently within our government.
Not just our government, but our intelligence agencies.
Oh, yeah,
too.
at every level.
That's the thing that is concerning, too, the intelligence agencies. And, I don't make it like I feel like I often am defending President Trump when it's not even my mission to, like, defend the guy. But, the hypocrisy of these things is just so blatant. Here's the thing. Everybody, Donald Trump has been the way he is for the better part of 40 years. The man's been rich and famous his whole life. And a lot of the things that he says today about, we need to stop doing bad deals, business deals with China and getting ripped off by Europe, and saying we need to, manage our business better, manage our budget. We need to stop doing it, stop getting into wars that, or don't benefit us. He's been saying things like this all the way back when he was 30 years old and getting interviewed by Barbara Walters. Okay, he said the exact same positions the entire time. And for that entire 40 to 50 years, the left-wing media and all the socialites, loved him. And everybody wanted to be him. I think it was...
He was at Bill Clinton's wedding.
Yeah, at Bill Clinton's wedding. I think it was Obama or Michelle Obama or something that said people want... I think it was Obama in a speech said, people's goal is to be like Donald Trump.
Right.
Things like that. And only because he turned and registered as a Republican and ran against Hillary Clinton... Is he now this pariah and everything he says is crazy?
Well, and this is
he's a wild man.
Well,
it's like, give me a break.
Well, they can both be criminals, number one. That's fully on the table.
Yeah.
So I don't look at it as a
I mean, he's not scot-free on everything they've accused him of, but...
Yeah, I always say this. You wouldn't leave him in a room alone with your daughter. Why would you want him running the country? But... there is also, as we know, I'm a utilitarian, so I don't care if the president is a serial killer.
Well, but that's kind of like the beer theory. Is he somebody you'd have a beer with? No, but is he somebody that do I want him running my company, or would I want him running the country? Probably.
Do I want a leader who acknowledges the state of the actual world?
Yeah.
Yes.
And see, that's just it. And I feel like I'm always defending the guy because his businesses were impacted by the American economy. He cared about the American economy, and he cared about American economic policy and foreign policy.
Well, because he'd also negotiated firsthand. Again, it's kind of like when he said, "The reason I know that all this stuff is rigged is because I've taken advantage of it." It's like he knows what the Chinese government's up to. He knows what the Russian government's up to because he's had to deal with these people in getting properties built and hotels and golf courses and all that kind of stuff.
He's probably stolen money from all of them. So
which had he probably would already be in jail.
And what's interesting is it's like the Trump tax returns, right? Everybody kept freaking out that, and I take a step back and try to think to the basics here. Okay, wait a minute. So he's been rich and famous for all these years, been having to file taxes, and obviously he doesn't do his own taxes. Okay, the guy has a corporate accounting firm. He doesn't probably even know what's going on. He picks up the phone and says, "Bob, what do I owe anything or do I not?" "No, you're awesome, Bob. Give yourself a bonus," right? He doesn't probably even know. Okay, but here's the thing: if he's that bad, and if there's really something to that, don't you think that the IRS, who has a SWAT team, by the way, why does the IRS have a SWAT team?
Oh, God.
Voluntary compliance.
Who apparently shoot each other.
Yeah, for a fact the IRS would be up his behind so far.
Yeah.
If that man
if he had been guilty,
if he owed a penny,
if he had been guilty of tax evasion, they would have thrown him in jail like Al Capone right away.
They would have been on him when he was running for president.
Yeah.
But they weren't. Why? Because as much as they might have hated to admit it, you had IRS executives up there probably getting phone calls from politicians. "Hey, what do you got on this guy?" And they're like, "Listen, we've been looking at Donald Trump for 40 years, okay? This dude's clean. His stuff is what it is."
But this is a perfect example of why, regardless of who the other candidate would have been, I never would have voted for Hillary Clinton. Because the level of corruption and the level of vindictiveness and I don't even know what other words to use, that it would have taken somebody like that knows how to manipulate the government in that way would have been able to do what they did. Because all these roads led back to Hillary.
Yeah, I love the Dave Chappelle skit where he talks about the Trump Hillary debate, and he says that what the reason why Americans loved him was because he was the first person to ever get up there and say to Hillary Clinton, you won't change the tax code, and I know you won't, because you and your friends use the tax code to get away from paying taxes. If you want me to pay more taxes, change the tax code, but I know you won't, because I use the same system you do. And like basically said, I know the system. You know, the other line is, the system's corrupt. Well, how do you know the system's corrupt? I know this. When Donald Trump's like, I know it's corrupt because I use the system. Yeah. And like nobody's been willing to not admit it. Yeah. And he just comes out as a businessman and says, I admit it. I own businesses and I have to use the system.
Any person who can sit and look at our tax code and its voluminous amount of just crazy regulation and the amount of people that they have to employ and all the things that go into enforcement. And then those same people will convince you, yeah, you definitely don't want to just do an easy to calculate flat tax. What you want is this system where we have to employ over 100,000 people.
We can't have a flat tax because a simple tax code would put so many people out of business.
It's like, hey,
exactly.
This is
people would really be paying their taxes though. If you had a flat tax, there'd be no way around it.
Right.
Well, right.
You know, you made X.
The problem is again, like with all taxes, is that the minute you employ that, let's say we do a VAT tax, like much of Europe does. The problem is as we've seen in Europe, you know, it's great that they've been around for hundreds of years ahead of us because we see all the mistakes they make. You know, it never stops there.
No,
because now they have the variable and the variable tax, and then they have all these other taxes on top of it.
Yes. Well,
and you end up like you end up like Britain and the Beatles, you know, where the tax man taxes everything.
So. One of the problems that we have when we're trying to suss this stuff out too is especially because so much of this is public opinion. If you even think about what we just talked about, so you were for what I think are very good reason, you're very worried about a potential Hillary Clinton presidency. So almost anybody in the world looks good to you. The problem is if we keep picking our leaders like that, we're just basically saying, okay. The gunman is fine. I just want the gunman that's not going to shoot me. So, so like that's a dangerous way for us to continue picking leaders.
And this actually transitions us right into our next topic. Thank you so much, Ginter, which is the Republican primary. You know, because to me, regardless, hey, thank you for your service. Thank you for your 4 years. You know, as president, you know, you did a great job. You followed through in a lot of things you said you were going to do. Now, I think there's too much smoke. I think you need to handle your business and let somebody else, you know, try to go after, you know, this administration and get them out of office. And that's my argument for voting for Ron DeSantis. Again, I wasn't crazy about Trump because I thought it was a whole marketing, you know, I thought it was a publicity stunt.
Yeah.
And
thought he was just selling wine, huh? He just,
you know, I just never thought, right, exactly. And also because he was so unpredictable, I thought that he was a liability and that like, there's no way he's going to win because he's going to shoot himself in the foot at some point.
Something's going to happen.
And he kept getting by, you know, despite all these controversies.
Yeah.
Them old Duke boys are at it again. He just jumped the General Lee over the bounds of polite society.
I didn't think it was real until I went to a rally. I didn't think it was real until I got invited to a rally.
No, the support was real.
When I saw that, I was like, this is wild, dude.
Yeah, the support was real because, again, he's willing to say the things that people aren't, that
would get everybody else fired at their job.
Yes.
Well, exactly.
And everybody else gets fired if they say those things. Donald Trump gets to say it.
It's often levied as a criticism, but I actually think it's very telling when people, you know, whether they're elitist or they just don't put themselves in the classification of being poor white trash or whatever. And it's like, yeah, well, he appeals to those people. I'm like, right, but he appeals to them. You're not doing anything. You're not addressing.
Well, this goes back
in fact,
to
you're telling them most of their concerns are wrong.
Yeah, well, this goes back to what we were talking about at lunch. Trump could run the way that he ran Because he had nothing to lose.
Right.
It's like, what are you going to do? Kill my political career that doesn't exist?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? What are you going to do? Come after my Senate seat or come after my... No.
Right.
They couldn't come after his businesses.
Right.
They couldn't, so he had nothing to lose. So he could go out there and be honest and blunt and truthful. And, and he could, again...
And funding his own campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
No, he raised money, but I mean... He was on the hook.
He did use some of his own money, sure.
Yeah, he put up the money. I'm not saying he wasn't able to get it back, but
one of the things that is also bothering me, and this has already been verified, is that he is currently using campaign contributions for his legal fund. You know what I mean? And so things like that is where I think he's putting us at a disadvantage in going into these Republican primaries because, again, like, he's still going to need every dollar he can get to beat Joe Biden. It's going to be close because we've got two very unpopular candidates.
Yeah, I just don't like I hear what you're saying, and it's like he's going to lose, he's unpopular in the media, and it's like, yeah, but if we throw in the towel with every candidate that the media harps on and drags through the mud and creates false allegations and indicts people for frivolous things and questionable things, it's like if we give up every time like that, we'll never have a candidate.
It's not giving up. Not giving up.
The only candidate the Democrats will ever leave alone is when Republicans run a Democrat.
Yeah, but it's not giving up.
Concerned when they're okay with
no, but it's not giving up when you have a stable of other candidates that could easily beat Biden in a general election.
And what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I mean, the American people or the people that are planning to vote on the Republican ticket will just stick with them for right now.
Well, because they're not thinking. They're not thinking strategically.
It's like 70%. It's
no, I understand.
It's like no one can beat him until he.
Two very important questions.
Yeah.
Number one, can Donald Trump beat Joe Biden? Is question number one. And question number two is who can get more votes than Donald Trump on the Republican ticket?
Is there anything? This is the great thing about he was truly independent. He didn't need the job. Is there anything that someone could offer Donald Trump? And I mean above board here, like any opportunity, like
No.
Is there anything they could offer him to not be at the top of the ticket?
No, I don't. Because I think for him this serves multiple purposes. One, I think it feeds his ego. The other is
he never takes second. Yeah, he's never willing to take. He'll lose, but he's not willing to take second.
No, right? he'll claim that this election was stolen too.
Which the Democrats claimed in 2016.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not forget.
That's the game everybody plays.
And I want to mention that really quick.
Twice too, because it wasn't only for Trump, but it was in the Georgia governor's race as well.
That's right. The Democrats sued in more jurisdictions in 2016. Saying that Donald Trump stole the election from Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump did in 2020. And they sued in Georgia when Stacey Abrams didn't win. So the Democrats are perfectly fine with questioning elections when they lose.
Right.
So let's cut with that crap.
But that points back to the earlier problem that we have when we have the modern combat politics that we have now is that any tactic, anything you can overlook to keep the demon at bay is a price worth paying. And it's sad that's where we come to.
Trump's going to be the nominee, whether you like it or not. He's going to be the Republican nominee.
I don't think that Joe Biden is going to be at the top of the
But see, this is the thing is
Joe Biden knows where all this. He knows where the skeletons.
He's not going to be alive. I truly believe
he knows where all the skeletons are buried.
But I don't think he's healthy enough to run. I think that there is a very high likelihood that prior to the election, Joe Biden has to be removed from the ticket. I think it's
before that, what bothers me is the fact that Trump doesn't want to. He's not going to participate in the debates, and to me, that's a cop out. Yeah. I don't care. He
doesn't need to.
No, I know he doesn't need to. Strategically, it would be to his detriment to do so.
He can only get on the witness.
When you're at 70%,
no, of course,
you have nowhere to go but down.
But I think it's because he knows that he couldn't beat Ron DeSantis in a debate.
No,
I think Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, Ron would show up ready. Guaranteed.
And so I think he knows, and we're going to see after this first debate, because honestly, what can and will probably take out some of these candidates is going to be this first debate. It's going to show. It's going to show who's who. I think Ron's going to do well, and maybe we'll have somewhat of a contest. Right now, it's no contest. Trump's running away with the primary.
More than he's right, Ron needs to prove that he's fun.
Yeah, that's kind of like Rick Scott, right? He had a hard time being like kind of cool and approachable. What's going to happen with Vivek Ramaswamy? Am I saying it right?
Well, people are speculating he's going to be the VP pick for Trump.
Have you watched any of his stuff?
I mean, he's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, look, he's great. He's brilliant. I mean, but we have candidates like that enter from time to time, right? Sure. They're very successful. Like new, vibrant, non-politician, got some money behind them so they can kind of fund their own thing for a good little while until things pick up. And they never make it. They never make it to the top, but they kind of mix things up, And he doesn't. I don't think he's the kind of guy that just wants a job. I think he's running to be president. I don't think he's running so that he can be a congrandman.
I will say
he doesn't need that.
I listened to him at length on a couple of podcasts, and I got the at least. Hey, and how weird is it that this struck me as odd? He struck me as a very genuine person.
Yeah, of course.
And the fact that, and I remember thinking I felt dirty even listening to something that was that hopeful, because I was like, how bad is it that the idea of being kind of actually inspired, and not even inspired by a politician, just like, oh, I don't think he's a dirtbag. That's been a long time since somebody going for president that I could say.
Isn't it crazy how we look at people like that and we're like, they're amazing and they're not going to make it because we know that they're not because we know that they're not part of the system.
It's
right.
True.
You know that they have no real political experience, and whether people want to admit this or not, I mean, I think people like Ron DeSantis have proven this. Like, being good on a microphone isn't enough. Right. If you really want to be great in politics, you got to know how to govern. And sometimes that means knowing how to be tough, on people. It means leading. It means taking risks and all that. Yeah. I mean, that's what separates, kind of your regular politician that no one really respects. The problem is,
again, like Ron knew that the gas was going to run out on all his COVID brownie points. All right.
Right.
If he was to wait another 4 years, the brownie points on COVID would have run out by then, because that would have been no, of course. Well, that was going to happen anyways. But at least right now he can still kind of take credit for what he did, which is another reason why Trump doesn't want to debate him.
And when he gets defeated,
because Trump loses that COVID debate.
He does. And when because Trump was trying to he was trying to play ball.
Yeah.
And he got zero credit for that.
Right.
He was trying to play ball with the scientists and all that, and the media still gave him a hard time about it.
The great failure of the Donald Trump presidency was his massive blind spot, and he didn't realize he was being outmaneuvered on the national stage by a bunch of nerd doctors. Who got him out of office. Well,
Trump being but see here, and this is the difference between this is the difference between a businessman and a politician, and this is actually the weakness of the businessman. He spends his whole life believing that you hire people off of their resume, and so when he looks at somebody and says, "Oh, this person's they've been doing it this long, infectious disease, blah 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 blah," he thinks, "Okay, this person's an expert." And they might be, but what he doesn't have a sense for is how that's going to impact him politically.
Absolutely.
And Ron DeSantis understands that the people that he brings around him can't just be good at what they do. They have to also fit with the political operation that you're trying to run,
right.
And you have to make sure they do you no harm. And to your point, those people were happy to come out and basically counter him and question him. And Fauci the whole time is like giving the wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the media guys as he's walking off the platform. Like, it's kind of like, I'll get with you guys later. We know what's going on. We're not listening to him.
Right.
I mean, it just, Trump
I'm
was
surprised that he held on to Fauci as long as he did.
I am too, because he thought that because he believed that people would say, who are you to get rid of the doctor, right? You should be listening to the doctor. But listen, the federal government was legitimately scared in the beginning of COVID, right? And they were doing everything that they thought made sense, and Trump got wrapped up into that. But the state leaders, had the benefit of kind of watching this play out in a smaller level, right? Like what's going on in my backyard.
Yeah.
And Ron DeSantis probably got really great advice, and he's smart enough to like pick out what makes sense and what doesn't. And he was able to see, like, I don't think Florida has to play this game.
Yeah.
We've got
Florida's not New York.
We've got 12 months of sunlight
Plain
here.
and simple, yeah.
We got 12 months of sun. Like, let's open this thing up. If you want to go to the beach, let's get some UV rays on you. Let's get the wind blowing. This is probably going to be better than everybody just, cuddled up at home.
Well, and I think what reinforced that was the double standards, right? The fact that you couldn't, take your kids to a playground in some states, but you could go to a protest.
But you could go to a protest.
Yeah, but you could go out and protest.
And so once that happened, and see, here's the thing. Once that happened, I think Ron DeSantis, being a good politician, was able to see that and understand where this was going to go. That for the common man, it's absurd to tell me that I can't go to church, but I can go to a BLM protest.
Yeah, right.
I can't go to my favorite mom and pop sandwich shop.
Right.
But I can go to Walmart.
Right.
It's like nothing makes sense.
Right.
And so as a politician,
my body, my rules.
Yeah. As a politician, he realized very early on this is absurd.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to deal with this is by getting out in front of it and leading. And he was willing to take the risk and lead. And it was a huge risk because it could have backfired on him if a bunch of people died, but they didn't. And so then he ended up looking like the smartest guy in the room because he was willing to be a leader.
All right. So before we get, I want to pull up some polls on. Lindsay's gonna. There I go again. I'm out of. I'm rusty. I'm rusty on my hosting skills.
We need to.
Our
come
producer
up with
is going to pull them up.
So.
We need to get her a producer name,
I know.
kind of like there's like Timbaland.
Maybe
Dr.
using
Dre.
last name instead. All right. So polls ending today. Let's see. This one's really interesting. It's
Is it going to come up there or no?
It's over here.
Okay.
Yeah. So Rasmussen put out a poll showing DeSantis. Now, Trump's not in this poll. All right. But Ramaswamy and DeSantis virtually tied, 23%. Ramaswamy with 24%, DeSantis
That's
23%.
huge, by the way.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That's 818 likely
so
voters.
he's about to raise $10 million.
And so, yeah.
Ramaswamy, he'll raise $1 million in the next
These are
48
respectable.
hours.
These are respectable polls. I mean, Rasmussen's other poll right beneath it with Trump puts Trump at 49%, which again, crazy. Ramaswamy with 11% and DeSantis with 10%. So obviously the debate is going to come down to those two guys because I don't think anybody beneath that has a chance. I mean, there would have to be some serious political destruction
so you
in
know
this
what that
debate.
means, though? You know what that means, though? That means that there are Trump supporters who, when it's not when it's DeSantis and Ramaswamy, you see the numbers.
Yeah, Ramaswamy has the advantage by one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you insert Trump, they don't jump. They don't jump
pulls
to
from everybody.
They don't jump to DeSantis. They go over to Trump, right?
Yeah. Well, no, because they pulls from both. Because DeSantis is 23%, Ramaswamy is 24%. And then he basically pulls about 10 points from each when you factor in Trump.
Okay.
So Trump comes in at 49%. And then Ramaswamy has 11 and DeSantis is 10.
There is also a huge race card that is the traditional bellwether for the Democrats that they can't play if you've got a guy named Vivek Ramaswamy.
Well, you know what? We've been saying that the last few cycles, and the problem is Democrats are never going to relinquish that card because we had Marco Rubio, we had Tim Scott, we had people realize. I think more and more people each time realize okay, that doesn't have any merit any longer.
Right.
What's that?
When they play the race card and says, oh look, the Republican is all white candidates,
right?
But even when we've had diversity, Nikki Haley, when we had it's like they still won't give up that race card.
But remember,
of course,
they just lose credibility on it
because then they say, well, you're the token Hispanic or you're the token black guy. They don't actually just allow the person to run for office.
Right.
The presidency, though, specifically for the last 4 elections, has been a game of 2.5% of the population, convincing them to go one way and not go the other.
But that's been my point that I've made to Joe many times offline, which has been Trump is going to get all the votes he can get. He's not going to gain any new votes. I don't see a lot of people saying, "Oh, you know what, Biden screwed up."
But he did in the re-election. He got 10 million more votes than he did the first election, right? And that was kind of one of his issues with the whole trust of the election. He's like, so you're telling me that I got 10 million more votes than I did the first election, but somehow I got blown out by Biden? Like, it didn't. There's so many ways in which it didn't make sense.
That a white octogenarian also was the most popular presidential candidate of all time.
Everyone admits did not campaign.
Yeah.
Right.
So it just didn't. On the face, it doesn't make sense.
But. Well, what I think that doesn't account for is the complete snow job. And again, to me, the election makes complete and utter sense if you view it from how the coverage went for it.
Yeah.
So it's amazing Republicans win any elections. Given the media coverage.
Well, and keep in mind, with all the stuff that we're finding out about Twitter, we only know about the government collusion and silencing of specific political things related to the election because Elon Musk got together a group of guys and they paid $44 billion.
Yeah.
Without $44 billion to prove it, which I haven't checked the math on what the top 10% distribution's like. That's a pretty hard chunk of change.
Well, and how was it that the Facebook stuff came out too?
So because they have APIs that call each other, and so when in the process of investigating that, Musk found out a lot of things. So I happen to believe that Elon Musk, the real reason he wanted Twitter was actually to figure out the underpinning.
Yeah, you realize that. So first of all, isn't Twitter half the size from employment status? Don't they have like half the employees that they did?
It's literally like 30%.
Okay, so they have like 30% of what they had. So they were bloated before anyway. Okay, which we knew that. But also that goes to show that you had all these conservatives that probably working at Twitter, that obviously couldn't say much. They just did their thing because they wanted to work at Twitter and keep their heads down. And those people have been like unleashed because the boss is like, I want to know what's going on. And they're like, well, if you want to know what's going on, here you go.
Right.
And they're like, and all the liberals are like, I'm out of here. I'm taking, this sucks, and so they exposed all that. And, which anyway, the American people should care more about the fact that the U.S. government intelligence agencies are putting people inside of social media companies, internet-based companies.
But we now know they do it across every media platform out there.
And what we learned was that every single, I think most of us kind of assumed this, but now we know that it wasn't, that Edward Snowden was just scratching the surface of what was going on.
Right.
That in reality, all of your text, all of your emails, all of your private messages, all of your social media, 100% of it is on a server with the U.S. government. So if you've ever said or ever done anything, 100%. And the intelligence community wants to hurt you, they can do it.
It is an accurate statement to say that the government took your tax dollars and used it to hide information from you.
And this is spying.
Right. Directly.
And not only is it warrantless searches.
Yeah.
Because and we need the Supreme Court to go in and decide that your internet stuff is like your papers. But not only is it warrantless searches, which is unconstitutional, but it's spying.
Yeah.
On U.S. citizens.
Right.
And the NSA, if I understand correctly, their whole charter, their whole thing is they're supposed to be outside of the U.S. They are not supposed to be spying, and it was the Patriot Act that the way they get to it is like, well, we intercepted an international phone call, and therefore we picked up the U.S.
So one of the
citizen, phone call.
One of the big fights is one of the reasons why I think you're seeing the FBI in the news so much is because for a long time they were the only federal agency that was actually allowed to act on U.S. soil. So they had this level of cachet about them. Yes. You had to go through. That's why
because they are the ones that would ultimately get a search warrant on a federal level and execute.
So they're losing clout. Because of the fact that everybody with an acronym now is biting off of doing things.
What if you had a kid that was like, Dad, I want to be an FBI agent? Like in the past, you would have been like, wow, that's cool, son.
Yeah.
Like or.
I would've
daughter.
said, get out of my room.
But now you're like,
Yeah.
like,
Look,
oh,
I mean,
no, like, is
and
that really?
So one of my best friends from high school, he works for a DC agency, and I'm not going to say which one, you know, because he does open up to me about what he sees going on behind the scenes. And even he is outraged and disgusted by what he sees happening behind the scenes. And what he sees is even worse than what we think is going on.
Yeah.
And he sees it firsthand on multiple levels.
Yeah.
And some more obvious than others. You know, but it's unfortunate because even in agencies where you wouldn't think that this level of corruption would be happening, I mean, it's literally a swamp.
And you know,
I mean, I think that is the most appropriate way to describe it because everybody and everything is infected by it.
Well, and baseline budgeting only guarantees, because that what that concept is basically everybody gets about a 10% raise every year in every federal department. Baseline budgeting gets built in. So even if you do the worst job in history, congratulations, you're going to get 10% more budget next year.
Real quick, if I could have producer pull up the polls again. There's one that I think you can click on at the top of that page. Yeah, scroll back to the top, and keep going. That one, all the way to the left. So who's ahead in the Republican primary polls? And just to kind of wrap up the topic on this, and we got to wrap up the show as well, but this is kind of they average out all of the polls. And let's see, it's still loading. Let's see. Yeah, that's kind of breaking it down by poll. Go back up because there's going to be a graph there that just hasn't loaded. Let's see. It's right there under who's ahead, right in that gap there. But let's see. I'll just go by what I have in front of me. There we go. So as of today, averaging out all the national polls, it's showing Trump at 52.3%, showing DeSantis at 15.2%.
Yeah.
Ramaswamy at 9.3%.
with his little bump there.
Yeah, and I think as he goes and hits these early states, I think that number's. I mean, it's going to get harder for DeSantis. But again, this debate I think is going to be a big deal. I think it's make or break.
They're
for
just
DeSantis.
putting Pence's name is only there because he's the vice president. He's at He's at freaking 1-2%.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, on average, it's showing him at 4.7.
okay,
You know, but I mean, again, at that point, I mean, if you're below 5%, I mean, you're done.
Right.
but it gets you on the debate stage.
But
How's
the
that
question
going
is,
to work?
do you believe that
Is he going to? He'll be on the debate stage.
He will. His
how's that
his
gonna
ego
work?
won't allow him to not be.
do we think that that Trump is able to beat Biden a second time?
So
around?
why do you think Trump?
It's so close. I mean, you know, the polls are going to in every matchup. It shows that, like you were saying, it's literally about 2 points.
Why is Trump trending up and DeSantis trending down?
Well, it's the same
so
reason he got elected in
significantly?
16. It's the news coverage. He consumes the media.
Right.
You know, and right now, everything every major story that comes out about politics has to do with Trump, whether it's because of the primary or whether it's because of the indictments.
So you're saying that's just an earned media effect?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That he's climbing simply because he's getting so much media that he doesn't have to pay for.
Correct.
Yeah, well, and I think this...
Ron DeSantis' decline is greater than Trump's increase.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
So Ron DeSantis isn't losing people necessarily to Trump. He's losing people to everywhere else.
Those patterns are almost direct inverses, though. So
Yeah, I mean, if you look...
I think it's almost
okay, fair
1-to-1.
enough.
Yeah,
Fair enough. Okay, maybe he is. So we're saying that Ron DeSantis is.
I mean, he's losing to Ramaswamy,
Trump.
obviously.
Okay.
He's losing points.
But what that also shows, what it also means then, is that there are people. And maybe these are just all Florida residents. Yeah. Like maybe the 1% or 2%. Maybe seriously, maybe it just represents Florida residents. I have no idea. But I mean, we're literally saying that people are jumping ship from DeSantis back to Trump. Because why did you leave Trump in the first place? That means you were not a hardcore Trump supporter.
Right.
So you left Trump to support DeSantis. And then over the last
he's not Joe Biden.
And then over the last 6 months, all of a sudden, a percentage of those people are like, go back to Trump. Why? Why?
Because your only other alternative.
Well, I'll tell you why. And the last time Aníbal was on the show, he also illustrated this point, which I think is the case, and I think you've expressed this sentiment as well. The fact that our government is trying to take him down is all the more reason why you want somebody like him in office, because he is going to make it his objective to root out the corruption that we're seeing in our government. Whether he can or can't, who knows?
Yeah.
You know, but the truth of the matter is that we're like, again, we're seeing stuff that came out about this judge that one of the judges that Trump's having to go up against, and how, you know, her and her husband have actively donated against Donald Trump. And so
even if you don't like Trump, the idea is
it's a middle finger to the government.
It's a middle finger to the government, and if he accomplishes nothing else, perhaps he makes it more honest for the next guy or girl. Right? At least maybe he exposes this, right? Sunlight has
put some legislation in place.
Right?
And
sunlight is disinfecting, right?
Yeah, clean house.
He puts some sunlight on all this thing, and it kind of disinfects the swamp. Dries this swamp up a little bit, cleans up the system, so to speak. And so for the next Republican or Democrat,
the problem is
that
that
candidates can run in a little more honest way.
These snakes, even if you cut off their heads, it's not going to kill them.
I mean,
he got rid of Comey. What good did that do?
Right.
Right? Because now we know that the FBI was involved in January 6th.
Gutted,
So what did that? So what did getting rid of Comey accomplish? Nothing.
What was the
I think they
January
figured
6th
out.
involvement?
Now they figured out that I think they're up to like maybe there's like 30 or 40. What's happened is all this footage has been released, right? So all these January 6 people, no matter whether you are a grandma or just stumbled around, they all got locked up. But they're able to go through, and I don't know who does this, right? Who's got the time for this? They go through the video, they're like, hey, that person right there, who is that person? And then they find the person, and then they're like, they didn't face any charges. That's odd. And then they watch them, like tearing down a window, throwing something. This person was actively participating in property destruction. They were like one of the first people. Who's the guy with the megaphone saying this way, this way? And then it's like, well, they didn't get charged. And so then you start. It doesn't take long before you realize these people worked for the government. And they were encouraging
Same with Governor Whitner's kidnapping scheme. They came to find out that they were all FBI informants.
They were all FBI informants.
Like I think 3/4 of the people that got arrested in that whole ordeal.
So it's like you know, I don't know the true legal definition of the word entrapment, but it certainly seems like the federal government ahead of time was like, listen, guys, Trump's going to have a big rally. And we actually want this thing to go haywire, and then we can charge Trump with sedition. And so they had all these informants. Which, look, it's one thing to have an informant in the crowd who's just, you know, kind of there to go along, you know, kind of collect intel, identify the key players, right? You got an intel guy. It's cops. Cops doing undercover work, right? You want to identify who are the players. That's not what's happening, though. These guys are becoming the main actors. And saying, come this way. We're all going in this way. It's like, well, wait a minute. That's kind of feels like entrapment.
When you become the instigator of the incident, you're no longer investigating the incident. You are the instant. You know,
you're inciting.
So
all right, guys. Well, unfortunately, we got to wrap it up. We're on a tight schedule here, but thank you so much, Joe Wicker, Nate Ginter.
Absolutely,
guys. Always a great time, and you know, we're gonna get back on the saddle here, and so we'll be back
100%.
next Monday. It's actually this Wednesday. Unfortunately,
so 2 days away.
I'm tied up, and so I'm not going to be able to cover it live. But we'll obviously have plenty to talk about. We'll probably make that the only
a Trump interview, right? Same time. Tucker's doing a Trump interview same time. Who's going to get more coverage?
That's going to be interesting.
Tucker on Twitter, right?
Probably.
Tucker on Twitter.
Man, that's going to be nuts. So I wouldn't be surprised, and good for Tucker, man.
I
mean, how funny would it be if Donald Trump just comes out, just f-bomb this, drop that, whatever, it just goes.
Tucker's going to get 20 million. Fox News will get 10 million viewers. Tucker will get 25.
Yeah, crazy stuff. So we'll see. We'll talk about it next Monday. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching the Yard Sign. We appreciate you. Thank you. Make sure you catch us on all your favorite platforms, or you can even just search Google, as Nate and I were talking about the other day. You can search Google, search the Yard Sign podcast, and you can find us just about anywhere online. All right. On behalf of Joe, Nate, I'm Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye. Goodbye.